to be looking at the number one reason why entrepreneurs struggle with succeeding in sales and marketing, and really succeeding at any new goal or endeavor that you set your mind to. There is a major fundamental struggle that people go through, and we're going to be looking at not only what that is, but even how to overcome that and what you can do to increase your conversions, increase the percentage of people who have success with your training. If you're an author, a coach, a speaker, or other high-level entrepreneur, or you're a content creator of any kind, then this is the training for you. I'm going to be sharing with you how you can have more people saying yes to your training and advice, and have more people having success to implementing the principles that you teach. And we're going to be going over what are the major roadblocks, like the biggest problem that you are going to face as an entrepreneur that would hinder you from getting to the next level in your life, in your business. And really what that boils down to is the power of identity and who you are, or who you perceive that you are. The reason why I say that is because the strongest force in the human nature, in the human psyche, is the need to feel, to act in a way that is consistent with who you perceive that you are. That's your identity. Rarely will we ever act out of harmony of who we perceive. Like, our activity will be out of harmony with who we perceive our identity to be. And never will we act consistently out of harmony with our identity. Otherwise, when so many times, if you've ever noticed that people try to make these shifts in their business and their skills and their habits, where they're changing the behavior and it's just like a rubber band that they pull and then slaps right back. Why do we do that? Because we're trying to do something that's different, that is outside of our identity. And so our activities start to snap back down to who we perceive we are. That's always going to be that baseline. And God knew about this when He created you and I. When He created the world, He made it to be such. It's very interesting. In Genesis chapter 1, verse 28, we see this principle of be, do, have. And in the Bible, this is the guide to really having whatever it is in life that we're desiring, that God has promised. In Genesis 1:28, it says, and God blessed them, talking about Adam and Eve, mankind. And God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply. And multiply is an action word. It's a do. So in other words, it'd be like, do multiply, do replenish the earth, and do subdue it. And have dominion over the fish and over the sea and over the fowls of the air. So we see that this three-step process that God is revealing, in order to have what God has promised, we first have to do what He says, or do the action. And having is a result of doing, and doing is a result of being. So we have to be fruitful. And the word fruitful means like productive or produce. So in order to do productivity, we have to be productive. So it's how it is with everything in life. Being is your identity. It's your beliefs of who you believe you are, and doing is the activity, it's the action, it's the behavior. And every behavior is belief driven. We have to understand every behavior, whether it's an unhealthy behavior or it's a healthy behavior, all wanted behaviors and unwanted behaviors is belief driven, and including sales and marketing. So if you are seeking to increase your sales, then selling is a activity. That's a behavior. But in order for you to be successful at doing the sales, you have to perceive yourself as, I am a salesperson, or I am persuasive. I am a persuasive presenter. And if you perceive yourself as that, then you will do persuasive presentations, and you will lead people to say yes, or to be able to take you up on your offer and to have transformations results. So that it's again that have. So if you want to have customers, you have to sell. In order for you to sell, you have to be a salesperson. Does that make sense? And I would submit to you, one of the number one reason why entrepreneurs struggle in sales and marketing is because they're trying to do the activity without becoming the person who can do the thing so they can have the results. Whether that's increased sales, increased customers, increased transformation, success stories, whatever it is, we have to, and then so often a big mistake that people make is they focus on the doing, they focus on the tactics, the steps, the actions, what they have to accomplish, and they're so focused on that, and they're failing at it, and they're beating themselves up because they're not having the result, the work isn't working for them, and they're doing all this work, and they think that the work is what's going to change what they're doing. But the real work is not so much the work that you do outwardly, it's more of the work that you do inwardly. And it's been said before, and I totally agree, that when you work more on yourself than you do on your business, that's when you'll see real business growth. And what I've, and it's really interesting, Steve Larson, one of my marketing mentors, he mentioned how entrepreneurship is basically the personal development program with a compensation plan. It's basically the personal development program that you never signed up for. Because a lot of entrepreneurs, they get into business because they either have a skill, they have a solution or a transformation, they have an art that they're good at, that they enjoy, they like to serve people, and they get into business thinking that it's like, well, I want to do that and then get paid for it. Maybe I want the freedom, I want the resources or the abundance to be able to do things my way and to be able to serve others. But they don't realize that with business comes development. In order for your income to grow, you must grow. And your income's never going to grow higher than you grow yourself. And that's your thoughts, your feelings, your character, your identity. So in order for you to level up financially, in order for you to level up in your friendships and your family and your fitness, you have to level up. And otherwise, your results of life do not level higher than your identity. And this is what we're going to be talking about today, is shifting your identity. And not only that, if you have customers, if you have students, if you have people whose lives you are seeking to change and impact, then we're also going to be talking about shifting the identity of those you're seeking to serve. Now, why do we do that? Because, if you sell online courses, then there's very small percentages of people who actually complete online courses. There's a small percentage of people who actually apply the courses. And you ask why? Why is there such low completion rates? And I would submit to you, part of the reason is because people who are training, they're more focused on the doing, be, do, have. They're more focused on the doing than they are on the being. They're more focused on what to do, what are the steps, the techniques and the tactics. And as they go through all these, you could know all the tactics in the world. You could know exactly what to do, but knowing what to do is not enough. You have to understand why to do, the beliefs, and become the person who can do that naturally. Because the real reason why people are struggling, and I'll say this isn't just for online courses. If you're an author and you wrote a book, the content in your book, if you're just sharing with people what to do and the tactics and not focusing on why to do it, not focusing on, and your objective is to help your reader to become the person who can do the thing in each chapter, in each step. And the same thing if you're a speaker. If you're speaking from stage, if you're speaking on physical or digital platforms, online or offline, then your objective is not just to show people, like I was talking to, I was at a marketing event and I was talking to this lady who has been a men's stylist for many years, and her father was it. She grew up as a small child in this industry, even to the point where her name was Tiendress, which is literally spelled tie in dress. So it's in her very nature, her character, to help people with tie and dress. And I was like, wow, that's some dedication. But she was sharing with me how she is excited to go help people. She's going to create, her plan was to create a webinar and to explain how to create a signature story. And what a lot of coaches, authors, speakers, and trainers, what they do is they think that when they go forward and they teach all the tactics and steps, like she's going to basically give a course and try to fit everything that she knows about creating a signature style in one webinar, a 90-minute webinar, and she's thinking like that's what's going to sell people. It's like, no, don't do that. That's the worst thing that you can do, is basically try to teach a course in a sales environment. When you are looking to help people to say yes to your offer, then just overwhelming them with all these things to do is not what's going to help to sell them. What you want to do is show them instead, what is a signature style? Why does a signature style matter? And when you have a signature style, what will be the return on investment? What will be the blessings when you have a signature style? And then when you don't have a signature style, what will be the cost of inaction? What is it already costing them to not have a signature style? Those 4 things are very simple. And she's like, wow, this is mind-blowing. This is so simple. Because the thing is, a lot of people think that if I could just teach them enough of how to do this, then they're going to buy my thing. But in reality, teaching the how-to is one of the biggest ways to kill your sales and to kill your persuasion, because when you show all this how-to, then people feel that they don't really need you. When you go through all these things of how to do this stuff, then they're like, okay, well, I can go do this on my own. But the problem is, they haven't became the person yet to be able to do and implement those things. So information alone doesn't transform. What transforms is shifting people's identities. So whenever you have an opportunity to speak in public, whether it's in content, in a book, in a training, even in courses, but especially in sales environments, one of the biggest mistakes that entrepreneurs make is they're trying to get people to buy their stuff. They need to stop trying to get people to buy your stuff and start helping people to become the person who will naturally buy what you offer. Amen. When you shift from trying to get people to buy, because I want you to filter this whole talk through the be, do, have framework, this principle. Think about, what phase are you talking about? When you're selling, or when you're in a place of influence, and you're coming from a position where you are influencing someone, whether it's a student, it could even be a child, or it could be an employee, it could be influencing yourself. You want to think, if you're focusing, which is buying your stuff? Is that being? Is that doing? Or is that having? That's doing. That's you're trying to influence them to do the purchase. So as you're focusing, that's why it's a big mistake. Instead, focus on helping the prospect to become the type of person who naturally will do or buy what you have to offer. This is where you understand, when you get basic human nature, is that people, one of the strongest needs in the human minds is the need to act in a way that is consistent with how we perceive ourselves to be. So if they perceive themselves as, let's say you have a speaker training. Let's say you're teaching people how to speak. Instead of trying to tell people what to do for speaking and how they can get the speaking engagements, helping the person to see the value in speaking, to realizing lessons on, for instance, there's one an entrepreneur. I was coaching an entrepreneur at our implementation workshop, and what she does is she helps people to book speaking engagements and to be able to schedule to get their message out to the masses. And as she's doing that, instead of teaching people what to do to book the speaking engagements, teaching lessons showing the value of communication, the value of speaking not just one-to-one, but one-to-many, and learning the difference between not just speaking on their own platform, creating content on, say, their YouTube channel or their podcast, but learning to switch instead to speak on other people's platforms, other people's YouTube channel, other people's podcasts, that they have an audience with a group of people from other people's platforms that they wouldn't otherwise have on their own. And by learning to shift and to help the person to become someone who speaks on other people's platforms and giving them reasons why to do that and what will happen if they don't, cost of inaction, and when they speak on other people's platforms, what will be the return on investment when they do, that's the ROI, then you'll see, then they are becoming the person, like I am a person, I'm a speaker who publishes on other people's platforms. And then when she presents her offer of booking paid speaking engagements or booking speaking engagements on other people's platforms, then if I am a presenter on other people's platforms, then I will buy that. It's a no-brainer. It just makes perfect sense. That's what I'm going to do. Does that make sense? So it's teaching the person to shift or to become. That is what makes buying your offer just inevitable. That's what makes it a no-brainer. It's like that's the only logical option that I could do is say yes to what you're offering, because I have become the person who says yes to what you offer. So that's a big way to increase sales. But not only that, a lot of people think that once they sell, whether they're training, whether it's a book, a course, or a speaking engagement, or a coaching program, mentorship program, they think that once they have sold the person, where they said yes in exchange, and now they're enrolled and they're ready to go, or they're attending the events, or they're reading the book, now they're saying yes, that the selling stops. That's actually when the selling just begins. One thing I learned from Dan Henry's course training was, he was saying that even in the titles of whether they're the chapters of your book or your course, or the sections of your talk, you want to use similar sales principles, because the completion rates of sales are so low, and even people finishing books is often pretty low. Then titling the sections of your content in a way that makes people lean in and say, I gotta know what happens next. I gotta know give them a reason to go to the next step. Give them a reason to turn the next page. Give them a reason to still continue to pay attention as you're training, they're listening in the audience live. So that is, so you're still selling people to go, or to say yes continually, to move forward. And that looks like too, a lot of times, like in courses or training, you're teaching them the tactic or the step, but they have not yet become the person who can do that. For instance, like in strategic partnerships, one of the steps is learning how to, or booking engagements is being intentional in your networking on purpose. So in order for someone to do networking on purpose, speaking to people on a mission, seeing how can we create win-win situations, then the person first has to do very well to focus as much as you can on identity, because there's a lot of things you can change. That you can change habits, you can change environments, you can change beliefs and values, but out of everything that you can change, the one that's going to have the greatest, longest lasting influence, long term, that years after you've separated and you're no longer speaking to them or around them, is if you can shift their identity to become better, to become more, to become something new, then that will create a lasting change that will persevere through adverse environments. It'll persevere through conflicting habits. It'll literally shift the habits based on who the person is. So learning, like I would submit to you that it would be well worth your time, energy, effort to invest in whatever skills you can acquire that will help you to understand identity and learn how to shift it in other people's, including yourself. Because this is a skill that will pay back large dividends in more influence, more impact, and more income in the long run. Now, when you look at what is identity, if we were going to define what identity is, I would say identity is simply a set of beliefs. It's a set of beliefs about who a person perceives themselves to be. And when you realize it's really that simple, Identity is simply a set of beliefs about who a person perceives himself to be. If you can change a person's beliefs can change in a moment, in an instant. And because beliefs can be transformed so quickly, that means identity can also be shifted quite quickly. A lot of times, like I remember I was listening to a training, it was a challenge talking about how to get a book published fast. And in this challenge, the speaker, one of the things that he was sharing is he shared a few stories that he stacked about how decision makers are the most useful and valuable in business, in family, in just in general, that people who make decisions, that when you're calling in, you want the decision maker. When you're doing sales, you want the decision maker. When you're growing the business, it's decision makers who make the greatest impact and shift in the world at large. And he was talking about how for you to have the greatest success in writing your book, creating your course, making your speech, then you have to learn to love making tough decisions quickly and being that decision maker. And I was just like, wow, that just hit me in a new way. That and when he was sharing time to ask for takeaways, like what are some takeaways that people got from the training today? And one thing that I shared is that I am a person who loves making tough decisions quickly. And that was a shift. And from that day forward, my identity is like, I love making tough decisions quickly. That's who I am. But that was really from like a 60-minute training. And there was a shift of identity. And in like manner, and then also with that, like why was he teaching about making tough decisions quickly in the training? Because from a sales perspective, any decision, making the decision, that's the doing in be, do, have, right? The doing is also synonymous with buying, because the science of buying is the same science of doing. All the buying behaviors and what leads to that are deciding behaviors. All decisions that we make is through the same lens and process that we make purchases. So what's really powerful, one of the reasons I'm so passionate about sales is because I know that the more that I understand sales, the more that I'll understand decisions and how I can make better decisions, how I can help others to make better decisions. Even if it's not in a dollar exchange context, it could be in dealing with a family member, in dealing with a spouse, or or it could be a child or a parent or whoever, the people that you care about. Learning sales is learning influence, and influence is, there's no limit to the good that you could do when you master the skill of influence. But part of that road to mastery is understanding the skill of shifting identities and how to help someone to become something more, something new. And the challenge is, a lot of times when people have a problem, most students are going to come to you looking for advice on whatever the topic is. They're going to be looking for tactics. They're going to be looking for steps. They're looking for actions and things to do. And they want to know, they're just like, I don't need to know about the stories. I don't need to know about like reasons or whatever. Don't give me any of that mindset stuff. I just want to know what to do. And in reality, what they don't realize is the reason why they don't have, remember be, do, have, they don't have the result that they desire, isn't because they don't know what to do. And most of the time in our lives, the answer to have what we desire is not to do something new or not to learn something new, but more be reminded of what we already know, or to do what we already know to do. And if we would just do what we know, then 9 times out of 10, it's always enough to be able to have the result that we're really looking for. And I'll give you an example. I'll prove it to you. I would say that 80% of any result is why to. 20% of getting any result is how to. It's important for sure, but it's not as important as most people think. Most people think the reason that they don't have is because they don't know how to. And the first question that we go to is how do I do this? I don't know how, I don't understand how, or where do I start? And that's where they get stuck. They let the start stop them. But That's why I call it the tyranny of how. A lot of times we don't need to know how, we need to know why. And when the why is big enough, you'll figure out the how. And I'll give you an example. Let's look at losing weight. Everybody knows the way to lose weight is in some form or another good diet and exercise, right? But if knowing how to was all that was required, we'd have billions of people who feel fit, fabulous, and feeling great. But that's not the case, is it? Because how to is not enough. People need reasons to lose weight. And there's so many different reasons. Like, people may know diet and exercise is how to lose weight, but why don't they do it? Because they got all these reasons. It's the be in be do have. There's beliefs and identity where it's like, I am a foodie, I am a food connoisseur, or I am a chef, so I've got to be overweight. Not saying that all chefs believe that, but some chefs do believe, well, I'm overweight because I'm a chef and I know how to appreciate good food. It's like, well, the meaning that they attach to the word, the identity chef, is what is creating the behaviors of eating a bunch of unhealthy stuff. So it's a be, do, have. If we don't, if you could know all what to do, but still not have the beliefs, the mindset to put it into practice, and you won't have the blessings. Is this making sense? So I say this because as your students, as your audience, as the people you're called to serve is coming to you, know that they're likely going to be looking for tactics. They're looking for steps. But what they really need is the reasons. They need the beliefs. They need the identity of becoming the person who could do the steps. I'm not saying don't give the steps, but understand, yes, that reasons reap results. So focus your conversation on reasons and you'll help people have greater results. And same thing when I do performance reviews with my company, and when the leaders are coming and we're coming together, sometimes my leaders, they'll come and they're all excited to talk about the projects and the processes of what they're doing and the activities and what's been accomplished and the different achievements. And I'm like, yeah, this is great. I'm glad that's going down. But I really just see that the accomplishments and the achievement, the work and projects isn't really the big thing. It is more about the projects and achievements and that doing is really just the vehicle. It's an excuse for becoming. And who the person becomes as a leader, who they become in their beliefs is what's more interesting to me and more important than even per se what gets done and what gets accomplished. Because I know any problem in projects, in achievements, in productivity, any problem that our team has in there, it's always 150% a belief issue. And if we can identify the limiting belief and shift that with liberating truths and shift the old identity for a new identity, then they will become more productive. They will become more fruitful. They will do more multiplying, and then they will have more results, more success in the company, in their role, in their team. Does that make sense? So focus 80% of your time on the reasons and being, and 20% on the doing, and then you'll have 100% more, 10 times more of having the results that you desire in life. I guarantee it. And I'll give you an example. So we have, I really love seeing people grow in their leadership, because I know that the law of the lid, John Maxwell talks about how there's a lid that every organization, the limit to every organization, there's a lid, and that is the level of leadership of the people collectively combined. That the organization will never grow more than whatever that level of leadership is. So one of the ways to grow a company is to grow the leaders that are in the company. And Kamran is a leader who we've been working with, and he has a goal to be a better manager. He wants to improve his communication and teamwork skills of being able to set expectations, of delegating, of being able to encourage people who are doing well. And so his identity prior to the old identity is like, well, I'm not a very good manager, but I want to become. So that's a goal, right? But what happens is he, like yesterday, he was able to put together this really awesome, we call them a workathon, or sessions where people come together and they collaborate for one project, and we get together and we make progress there. And so he gathered together people who have the right skills for the project, and as he's working together to solve this problem as we're going through, he was clear on the expectations, he was clear on what we're doing, and we were able to do it together. People weren't being left behind, people were productive, they were contributing, they were clear, they enjoyed the process, and you could see, like, going through that process, it was a very successful session of a lot of productivity. And the reason why is because Kamran is a manager, he's a talented manager. And now he has these stories that he's able to associate and link these new associations of how he already is a manager. But in order to thrive and continue those results, he has to see himself as the manager. And then if I am a talented manager, then I will do what talented managers do. And it becomes automatic. Now it's just a matter of understanding, what do talented managers do? If that's who I am, then those actions, those behaviors, those communication, those skills will start to come much faster. Does this make sense? And that's a lot of the transition of be, do, have, and this concept that I teach in my book about modeling the mindset of your mentor. One of the ways to shift to be your identity, or the identity of your student is becoming, is by helping people to model, like, what is the beliefs, what is the mindset. If that's 80% of the problem, then how do we do that? Well, it's by modeling the searching questions. What are the questions that great managers ask? And modeling the stories. What stories do great managers ask or remind themselves of? Or the stories do they stack of times that they've helped other people, of times where they've led a team and things that went well? These are stories that managers stack. And when they think of themselves as a manager, then does a stack of success stories of times where you've managed come to your mind? Or does scarcity stories stacked of all these times where you tried to manage and you failed, or that people didn't understand, or that you didn't get a project done, do those come to your mind? Because that's the difference between successful managers and struggling managers, is successful managers stack success stories, struggling managers stack scarcity stories. And in order to shift, it's a large portion about shifting the stories. When you shift the story you tell yourself, then you'll shift your identity. You will shift who you believe that you are. And this concept, I go into more detail in my book, I Want to Mentor, Now What Do I Do? And about modeling, there's actually a whole section about modeling the mindset of your mentor and how to model the mentors, so you can maximize when you are learning from a book, mentoring from a book, from a course, from a seminar, from coaching program. When you understand the process taught in the book, then it will actually help whatever investments that you have made in the past, or that you have now, or that you will make. They all start to multiply the resourcefulness, the value that you receive from these mentorships by understanding these principles. That's I Want to Mentor book.com, and you can get the free first 3 chapters if you want. So that's an example of being a manager. And another example, when I had a student who, when she first came, Katharina did not view herself as a public speaker, but I gave her an opportunity to be able to give her first talk in the public, to be able to address others. And I know that like public speaking, communication is a skill that really I believe everybody has, and everybody's capable of speaking in public. And I realize that not everybody perceives themselves or has a set of beliefs that I am a public speaker, but that doesn't mean they're not capable, doesn't mean they're not talented, doesn't mean that they are not gifted in public speaking. So when she came to me, she was taught as a small child by her mother. It's like, Katharina, you're just like me. You and I, we have problems communicating. We have a hard time expressing ourselves, and that people have a difficult time understanding us. So that's who you are. And so she lived for most of her life with this belief that I have a hard time expressing myself, I'm not a public speaker, and I'm not good at communicating. And when she came to me, one of the greatest gifts that I give to my students is I don't accept their limiting beliefs. And I don't accept their scarcity stories. And one of the best gifts that you can give to your students is to not accept their limitations and see in others before they see in themselves. So when she came, I gave her an opportunity. Hey, would you like to address this group that we've gathered together? Would you like to speak to them? And she's like, oh no. At first she's like, oh, I can't do that. I'm not a public speaker. You see how I'm inviting her to do a behavior of speaking, but why did she believe she can't do it? Because I am not. It's again that great need to act in harmony with who you perceive your identity is. So that's one of her biggest objections of why she couldn't speak. It's because I am not a public speaker. And I'm like, sure you can. I see you speaking to people all the time, and you've got a lot, you know the subject well. This is something that it's like, I think you do wonderful. And through a little bit of overcoming some objections, being able to talk with her a bit more, then eventually she was able to, she's like, yeah, she'll do it. And she got up and she spoke, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Like her very first talk was better and more clear, more natural than the first 50 talks that I gave as a speaker. And I'm just like, yeah, you're not a public speaker, whatever. The skill that she had was already naturally much more advanced than where I started. But you see, your identity really has nothing to do with your skills or your reality or your actuality. It has everything to do with your beliefs and your perception. And perception has everything to do with the stories that you tell yourself. So now she's clearly got a gift, but she didn't see it yet. So after giving her more opportunities to speak, helping to rearrange the beliefs that she has about speaking, giving her reasons to speak, helping her to see why she would want to, for her reasons, to start speaking, and doing that more often. Now she started her own podcast. She's been a guest speaker at physical and digital stages around the world. She's invited to speak at events when she travels. People see the skills that she has in public speaking, and she actually gets speaking engagements just because people listen to her and they're like, wow, I want to listen to more. Would you be willing to speak to my audience? And so where she goes, she gets invited. And that's a big shift and a transition. And now she's even helping other speakers to be able to learn how they can be more natural in adding their personality in their presentations and to connect with their audience on a more authentic level. And she loves it, and she's excited, and she's doing strong in that direction. But you see that the shift is the identity. Becoming a speaker, becoming a professional speaker. That's where, in order for her, like I knew as a student, in order for her to have these results, like I was able to see these things in her before she saw it in herself. That's one. Two, I didn't accept her limiting beliefs, her limiting stories. Three, in order for her to consistently speak in public and to impact audiences internationally, she had to first start seeing herself as, I am a public speaker. I am a communicator. I am a persuasive presenter. And once she sees herself as a presenter, then she will do presentations and she will have the result of impacting people around the world. Does that make sense? So when you're teaching people, you want to really ask, who do they have to become in order for them to say yes and to accept what I have to offer. And what you have to offer might be buying your speech, it might be buying your book, it might be buying your course, it might be buying your coaching program, or it could be in your content after they've purchased. What you have, like, who does the person have to become in order to say yes to what I have to offer? And what you have to offer might be step 1 in your framework, step 2 in your process, step 3. At every step, they have to become more. For them to do more, they have to be more. For them to have more, they have to do more. For them to do more, they have to be more. And every course, every book, every speech, every coaching program, it's all promising. There's some sort of powerful promise. There's a blessing, there's a result, there's a property at the end. That's a be, do, have. It's the have and have in the framework. And I go into more detail on this in my book, I Want to Mentor, Now What Do I Do? And this is such a powerful concept that when you can get this, you will have more success stories in your sales. And those success stories is one of the most powerful tools that you have to influence others, to let people know that what you have to offer really works. Because in sales, a great thing that why people buy is you don't need a bunch of like letters at the end of your name, or degrees and certificates and certifications. You don't need all of that to succeed in selling your advice online. What you really need is the success of your students. My credentials are the success of my students and the results I've been able to bring for them. And when I could share with you people who have gone through my process and has had a turnaround, and then like you're like, wow. And if you can identify with the people I'm describing, or if your people can identify with who you describe, then they're not going to ask you, where'd you go to school? They're not going to ask you, who certified you? Those are the last things on people's minds. What they really want to know is, does it work? Is it easy? Can I do it? They want to know is like, does it work? And can you help me to do that? And the stories prove that you can help other people to do that. So as you're collecting these stories, when you shift people's identity, then you will shift their activity. When you shift their activity, you shift their property. And when more people are getting the property you promised from your program, you have greater success stories, and you can use those success stories to then share in your sales and marketing, and more people say yes, and you create this cycle of success. All because you chose to learn the skills necessary to shift people's identities and help them to become the person who can do the thing, whether in your training or in your purchasing, so they can have the result that you promised. Shifting identities is extremely essential or extremely powerful tool. Most people aren't doing that. Most teachers are not teaching on the level of identity. Most coaches are not coaching on the level of identity. And here's a tip. If you find a coach or a speaker, or trainer, or author that is only focusing on what to do, or only interested in what you've done and the projects you're working on and what you've accomplished or not, and why, if you find a coach that only focuses on that, then run away, because they're not going to be able to help you at the level that you really need. Find a coach who focuses on identity, that focuses on your beliefs, that helps you to become the person who can do the thing. And it doesn't have to be me. It could be any coach that's able to do that, one that fits best for you. But when you find someone like that, then you've got yourself a keeper. That is a great thing to look for in a coach. That's what I look for in my coaches and in my mentors. And the truth is, any mentor that doesn't have a mentor doesn't deserve to be your mentor. So always make sure that they're constantly growing and they're developing and they're leveling up into new heights of what they're doing too. Now, this is and the last thing I'm going to leave with you is what I call the identity frame. This is so powerful. When I'm teaching in our 3-day implementation workshop, for those who want to get really clear on their signature stories, to get really clear on who the person has to become and learn how to create that type of person who can do that thing. And for those content creators who want to know how they could really implement in their book, in their course, in their speaking, in their profitable presentation, to know how to implement these principles and interweave them in all their content that they create, then I do a 3-day implementation workshop where we go deep dive, where you leave not with a big to-do list, but you leave with a big done list. And we fit in 3 days what would take others 3 years to accomplish. And when I teach, one of the concepts that I teach in my implementation workshop is what I call the identity frame. And what the identity frame is where you basically, Jesus used this a lot. And I'll give an example from Christ first, and then I'll show how that fits for you. In Matthew chapter 7, in verse 24 through 27, Jesus described how whoever hears my words and does them, I will liken him to a wise man who built his house upon the rock. And when the rain comes, the storm and tempest and the floods come, the winds blows, his house doesn't fall because it was founded on the rock, right? So that's the first person, the first identity, the wise man. Remember that. And everyone that hears my words and doesn't do them, he is like the foolish man who built his house upon the sands. And when the rains come and the floods come and all the storm is beating, his house falls, and great was the fall of it because it was founded upon the sands. Now, when you listen to that story, what person do you want to be? Who do you want to identify with in that example? The wise man or the foolish man? Yeah, the wise man. And like manner, this is an identity frame. And what this is you're contrasting two identities. The identity of a successful person and the identity of a failure person, the successful and the struggling. And when you do this, you're able to, like, naturally, people want to identify with the successful. And then what's amazing is Jesus attached meaning. He defined who a wise man is. The wise man is those who hear his words, and what happens? They do it. So all these behaviors that you would like the person, the student, the audience to be able to take, by becoming that person, you're able to define, you're able to label the identity, and you could define the behaviors that they do. So if they identify themselves as that person, then you start defining what kind of person, what that type of person does, the behaviors that person does, then naturally they're going to do those behaviors. And they could be buying behaviors, they could be deciding behaviors, they could be action-taking behaviors, and then they're able to have greater success as you're serving them. Then he identifies the foolish man, who you don't want to be, and then he describes, well, the foolish man does all these things, that, and you think about ask this question, you can write it down, it's so powerful. Ask, what would a person have to do to guarantee their failure with my program or with my result? What would a person have to do in order to ensure they would fail? What kind of behaviors creates failure with what I'm doing? And I believe knowing what not to do is just as important as knowing what to do. Because one, you could already contrast the two. So if you could identify, and this works for your sales and marketing, if you ask, like, what could I do to guarantee my failure, and then don't do that, go do the opposite. And in like manner, so when you're creating the identity frame, that's a question you could ask. And then all those things that guarantees failure, just associate those behaviors with the failure identity, the foolish man. And that's what Jesus did. And he showed them, again, like, the ROI of obedience, that your house doesn't fall and it stands, so that's a return on investment. And then the cost of inaction, if you don't, then not only does your house fall, but great is the fall of it, because it wasn't founded upon listening to the advice that I have to offer. You see? That's called an identity frame. Identity frame is when you're framing the person's mind, you're helping them to understand and see things differently, where you have two contrasting identities, and you're describing how those people behave, and where your audience will naturally want to be that person that could ensure their success. And that's one of the ways. It's not manipulation, it's not deceiving, it's literally serving at the highest level, because you're realizing what are the things that's going to guarantee their failure, whether they're doing that or not. Those are by being able to identify failure and identify the successful habits and successful behaviors, you're giving them the highest chance of success when you're using the identity framework. And you're just the frame, and you're helping them to see the difference. And when they can contrast, our brain loves contrast. When God created the world, he separated the light from the darkness. And he knows, like in our minds, our memory, our life, our decision is built based on contrasting two things. So when you give them a point of reference to contrast with, you're actually helping them to grasp much better with your communications. And I know that, like Proverbs, the book of Proverbs, King Solomon, who was the wisest and wealthiest man in human history, when he communicated, a lot of times he would contrast the rich and the poor. It says, the rich man's wealth is a strong city, but poverty shall be the destruction of the poor. So we're seeing this, the hand of the diligent maketh rich, but the soul that desireth shall come to poverty, where it's like if you don't do anything, the slothful goes to poverty. So you see, he's constantly describing what are the habits of the rich and the habits of the poor. And there's two identities. Solomon is using the identity frame. And you're like, naturally, well, I don't want to go to poverty. I don't want to be slothful. I don't want to. And he starts associating all these poor habits that produce poverty. And he shows all these abundance habits that produce riches or wealth or abundance. And you're like, oh, well, let me go do that. Things like being diligent, things that like communicating, things that valuing friendships, valuing wisdom, things of those nature. And so if you're in the make money space with your offer, you could share, people do it all the time. Where the poor people, they say, I can't afford it. Where rich people, they ask, how can I afford it? That's an identity frame. If you're in the health market, we have an online health food store, and I've been teaching health for years. And the way that you do identity frame there is where you're like, sick people crave sick food. Healthy people crave healthy food. So one of the ways to go from sick to healthy is to get your body into a state where you crave healthy food. And we teach people how to do that with our health products. So you have the sick and the healthy. If you're in the relationships market, if you're helping people with relationships, either friendships, connections, love, or a marriage, then you show like lonely people wait for others to talk to them. Lonely people don't resolve conflict quickly. But loved people who feel loved, people who perceive that love, they go out and give love first. Loved people have address confrontation sooner rather than later. So you have a contrast, and it doesn't have to be with lonely or loved, but what's really helpful is if you can make them alliterated. Whatever that contrast is, make it alliterated or make it rhyme. It's like those who struggle, those who just survive, and those who thrive. But there's two identities, they're contrasting, and if they're alliterated or rhyme, it helps the mind hold on to it much faster. And when you use that identity frame, then it could drastically shift your ability to influence people. And we go deep into this identity frame and so much more in our implementation workshop. If that's something that you're interested in knowing more about, you're welcome to apply to see if it's a good fit for you at mentormeenoch.com. And you can go there, we'll schedule a clarity call. We could see where are you now in your business and where do you want to be, and we can get some clarity on what you could do to fill the gap. And if the implementation workshop's a good fit for you, then we'll be able to do that. If not, we'll find a way that there is something that could help you to get from where you are to where you want to be and close that gap faster. So either way, you're going to find some great value from the clarity call. Go to mentormeenoch.com. And what we're looking at today is the number one reason, the biggest reason why entrepreneurs struggle with sales and marketing is, one, because they haven't became the person who will do sales and marketing. It's not enough to just do marketing. We have to become a marketer. If you want to be great at marketing, learn to see yourself as I am a marketer. If you want to be great at sales, then don't just think, well, I love serving people in this skill. Like I met a lawyer. I was hearing a lawyer saying, like, I love helping people to have healthy relationships, protect their business, and to be able to do law, like through law. And he's like, I love helping people understand laws to get results in their life. But because I'm an entrepreneur, I have to do marketing. And I have to put these things together. But when you trade that I have to I get to, and instead of like one of his struggles, the reason why he's struggling with sales and marketing is because he sees himself as a lawyer who has to do marketing. But as long as you see yourself as an author, as a speaker, as a coach, whatever you see yourself as, but you have to do marketing, you're going to struggle every time. Instead, see yourself, I am a speaker and I am a marketer. I love marketing. And when you learn to love marketing and when you learn to be a marketer, then you will do marketing that works and you will have the results of marketing where you can get your message to move the multitudes. And that's when the be, do, have that God created in Genesis, He wired the whole world to work in that capacity. When you align yourself with and you put your actions and beliefs in harmony with heaven, then you start to see more of God's blessings in your life and the results that you're looking for. So this has been the number one reason why entrepreneurs struggle in sales and marketing. If you enjoy this, then feel free to share it with other people and tell others that they can come too. Go live. I go live every Tuesday to do more trainings like this, and leave a comment below. Let me know, what is a subject that you would like to know about communication, content creation, sales, or marketing? What is something that you would like more detail on? And I'll definitely consider it for upcoming content or videos. Thank you so much for being a part of this. And remember, God doesn't call a qualified, He qualifies a called.